and welcome to today's webinar. We have proudly got Sheila Scott speaking for us today. My name is Kate and I'm the Customer Care Executive here at Quality Compliance Systems. Sheila will be running through your provider information return, soon to be called your provider information collection. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to ask them. If you're accessing today's webinar by a laptop or a PC, you'll find the Ask Question button to the right side of your screen in the middle. If you're accessing today's webinar via a tablet or a phone, you'll find the Ask Question button at the bottom center of your screen. We will be answering all questions at the end of the webinar, so please ask them throughout and we'll answer them at the end. I'm now going to hand over to Sheila, so please enjoy. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you joining this webinar today. I believe that almost 100 people will be joining the webinar, so each and every one of you is very welcome. I just want to say something before I begin. I know that you all know that the webinar is about the provider information return and the provider information center, but what I'm going to cover, I just want to tell you briefly about what I'm going to cover. At the beginning, I will be talking briefly about PIC and the changes that will be made at an unspecified date later this year. And then I will move on to my top tips for the provider information return. But those tips, I'm fairly certain, will also apply to the PIC. I just want to say one other thing before I begin. I will say it again throughout this webinar. The PIR, and in the future the PIC, will be one of the most important forms that you submit to CQC, I beg your pardon, as if I can't remember what it's called, to CQC at any time during the course of a year, because it is an important part of the intelligence that they hold about you. And so it's important that you give them as much information as you possibly can. And that will, of course, be part of my top tips. So who am I? My name is Sheila Scott, and I'm a nurse by profession. And in the 1980s, I was the proprietor of 2 residential care homes for the elderly in North London. I was the chief executive of the National Care Association until December 2014, and I continue as an advisor to the board of directors of National Care Association. I've always been passionate about representing the interests of registered social care providers to the government and implementing policy on improving standards in the social care sector. And I have worked with QCS, Quality Compliance Systems, for several years now, and I am equally passionate about their work supporting providers of care. I also work from time to time as a consultant in the sector. I do that. I usually work with homes that have had a poor report and are looking to improve. And I do that myself because it keeps me absolutely in touch with whatever is happening out there at the coalface. So to begin with, I've got so many important points to tell you, but one thing that I would like to tell you right from the very beginning is that it is your responsibility to have the right, to make sure that CQC has the right email address for your service. You would be surprised how many people have said to me over the last few years that they haven't been asked to submit a PIR. My first question now is always, have you changed your email address? And I would say about 9 out of 10 of them say yes. And that's why CQC haven't got the right email address, because we haven't told them. So whatever CQC knows, you need to tell them these changes that you make either to your service or to your email address. Because as you know, I'm sure, CQC only contacts you through email these days. So to begin with, what is the difference between provider information return and provider information collection? Almost all of you taking part in this webinar today will, I think, know what a PIR looks like. But none of us are certain yet what the PIC is going to look like, and nor do we know exactly when it's to be introduced. CQC have said that they are trialling the new system now with volunteer providers, and that they hope it will be completed by the spring of 2018. I am certain that they will not roll it out to all providers until they are confident that the new system is fully functioning. Some of you will be part or may be part of the testing of the new PIC system. And I would be really interested to hear from any of you who are, how it's going. Perhaps you just let me know if you are one of those people. The other thing is, do you need to make any preparations for the change? And my answer to that is certainly, I don't believe that the changes involved in the new system will be dramatic, although they will take into account the changes to the CLOEs that were implemented last November. And they will also take into account some things like the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations. I hope that you're all working towards having those in place by the 15th of May. If you've got a question about that, please email that to us as well. And the only other thing that I can think at the moment that will definitely be part of the, that will be different in the PIC will be that I'm sure that there will be questions about the fit and proper person relating to company directors. So the information that CQC will be looking for will be, there will be some changes, but they won't be that dramatic. But there will be significant changes when the PIC is introduced to the way data is collected now. The Provider Information Collection Service, or portal, replaces the 4 provider information return forms that we have at the moment with just one form. I think that must be, to begin with, a good thing. And it's important to note that because there's only going to be one form, that not all the questions will be relevant to your service. There is absolutely no reason why, when the new system is introduced, you should have to answer the questions that aren't relevant to your service. And CQC has already said that that's the case. You will, as now, be asked for key information about your service and how it is meeting the 5 questions and what improvements you plan to make. So changes to PIR introduced late last year will continue to be a part of the whole package. A dedicated portal is being developed, and you will be able to access your service at any time to update your PIC. Excuse me. This is extremely important. There should be no need in the future for a mad dash when CQC asks you to submit your report, because you will be able to update it regularly when you have the time during the course of the year. You will be required to update your account at least once a year, but you will also be encouraged to provide certain information more frequently. And why wouldn't you want to do that? I would if I was in your situation, because I know it will take the pressure off when I have to submit the annual return. CQC says, but I haven't seen them yet, that the questions have been updated and are more tailored for the service. So this new digital solution with a new approach which involves regular testing, which currently is being tested with providers, should, I believe, make a real difference to you as owners or managers of a service. You will, at some stage, be invited. You won't just be told that PIC is up and running. You will need to be invited by CQC to get yourself online to the portal. So as I've already said, the great benefit of this will be that you can update the information regularly, so that when CQC asks you to submit your return, you should be in a position to submit it after you've checked it, without the pressure that I know so many of you feel when CQC asks you now. And having that opportunity to take your time in preparing the data and to make sure you have missed nothing out will be important, because it's the little things that are really important when you're completing a PIR at the moment. I'm going to say this and again during this webinar, but when you're completing your PIR or your PIC, it is not the moment to be modest. This is the time to tell CQC why you are proud of your service. And I have to say to you, if you don't do it, who will? You may be interested to know who is involved in the testing of the PIC. CQC says that they have selected providers to test the system from all categories of care and all sizes of providers to make sure that it works well for everyone. And Andrea Sutcliffe, the Chief Inspector of Adult Social Care at CQC, said in a blog recently that she wants this change from PIR to PIC to be evolution and not revolution. And I do hope that that is what happens. I believe that it's really important that that should be the case. So if you have any challenges when your time comes, please contact me at QCS. There's plenty of information about PIC in the policies and procedures of the QCS system. Finally, I'm afraid I've got a warning about the PIC before I move on to the PIR. If you don't update your PIC annually, the highest rating that you will be able to achieve requires improvement. That is a really, really serious threat. So do be aware of that, please. So now I move to the provider information return, the PIR. But I must say that any tips that I give you today should apply both to the PIR as we're filling them out now and to the PIC in the future. This form, the PIR, is the main source of intelligence that the Care Quality Commission holds about your service. So again, I say to you, this is not the time to be modest. Anything you read about inspection will tell you that normally the inspectors always read the provider information return before carrying out an inspection. So you want them to know the best, the things that you are doing really well and how well you're doing them. And also, of course, the things that you've decided to improve in the coming year. For me, the information that you submit needs to be three things. clear and transparent, concise and precise, and honest. It needs to be clear and transparent so that the inspectors can understand it, and so that they don't have to spend a lot of time at your inspection finding out about what you're trying to say. You would rather, I am sure, that they are taking the time at the inspection to talk to residents, to talk to staff, to talk to people in their own homes if they get the chance to be sure that they understand exactly how your service is functioning. Many of you will know that you have a limited number of words to answer each question with. I would advise using bullet points to make your answers as precise as possible and to make them as easily readable too. And finally, it is essential for any provider of care services to be absolutely honest, and if necessary, brutally honest in your answers. Because if you're not honest, you can be sure that somebody will find you out. So I do urge you always to be honest. You will need in the PIR now and the PIC in the future to be able to demonstrate both what you have done or what you intend to do and what the impact of that has been or will be in the future. And these can be quite minor things that we're talking about, but it's best to concentrate on the things that have had a genuine impact on the people you're caring for. So, to be honest, if something you were planning to do has not worked out or was not successful, tell them and tell them what you're going to do instead. But if you've implemented, say you running a care home, when I was running a care home, and I'll concede that it's 35 years ago now, but when I was running a care home, the most successful thing that I did with the service users that I had at that time, care home for older people, was to take one or two of them each day out for a ride in my car, so that during the course of a week or two, they would all get a ride out in the car. They loved it and they talked about it. They told their family, and they would have told the inspectors if the inspectors came as regularly as they do now. It's those small things that make a real difference to people's lives that are important. When you come to the parts that ask you what you do well, this is the time to praise yourself and your staff. I know I keep talking about this. It's really important. It's really important that that you do that. Of course, some people will write to the CQC to say how well you're looking after their family members. But you need to point for inspectors to what you are doing really well. And I know, and you know, that the majority of the work that's done in the provision of adult social care is good, if not outstanding. But of course, if you are completing the form in a rush because CQC has just asked you to submit it in so many days, then you're going to miss things out, which is why you should need to be thinking about it and talking to your staff about it and making some notes during the course of the year. And of course, when PIC comes in, you will actually be able to do that online, which will be a great thing. I say again, I know you're going to be sick of me saying this, this is definitely not the time to be modest. And I don't know what it is about care providers, but you seem to me to be fairly reluctant to praise yourself. You've got to do it though. When you come to the parts in the PIR about improvements you intend to make, be realistic, put in timescales, but better to say to complete early rather than to overrun the timescale that you'd put in. CQC is really interested in the quality improvement that you are planning for the people that you care for. So they're particularly interested in quality assurance schemes, accredited systems, innovation, etc. You will all be doing things. You may not always recognize it, but you will always be doing something that fits into these categories. And of course, the things that you are doing can be very large projects, either that you've completed or undertaking, or minor matters, but it's all about making a real difference to the people you are caring for. CQC says, and I believe them, that they are interested in the outcomes for your service users. And if that's what they're looking for, then you need to be able to demonstrate the difference that you are making to the outcomes for the people in your care. When we talk about quality assurance and quality indicators, some of the things that you might not think are important, but which I think are important, are things like membership of a trade association, any trade association. If you're a member of a trade association, you are keen to learn, you are keen to meet with other providers of care so that you can learn from each other. Any quality management system that you have in place or you're going to introduce, that's really important too, from a number of different reasons. Any system like QCS is something to be welcomed. The system that you have will do a number of things. It will have all the policies and procedures that you need to have. It will have all the forms you need to have, and as long as you can manage to keep that up to date, then you can have confidence that what you need to do with regards to administration is being done. Another good one, and certainly one that I support very much, is a values-based recruitment system. If you look at the Skills for Care website, you will find a lot of information about a values-based recruitment system. And I know only too well how for some of you, it may be so difficult to recruit staff that sometimes it feels as if you're not able to implement a values-based system. But all the evidence would suggest that if you're using a values-based system, that you will recruit the right staff and they will stay much longer with you. If your membership, if your registered manager is a member of a registered managers network, whether local or skills or a Skills for Care one, that is definitely an indicator of quality. And assured projects, gold standard end of life care, all key indicators of your commitment to quality service. And in the same way, if you are part of systems such as the Dementia Pledge, the Social Care Commitment, there's any number of them, aren't there? But if you are, that shows your commitment to delivering quality care. If you've introduced some innovative activities as well, or an innovative project, if you're doing something absolutely new, or if you've learned from things that you've read about on the internet, this is the time to mention it to CQC. Even if it's early days with what you're doing, at least they can see that you are continually searching to improve the quality of the service that you're providing. And then there's such simple things as a program of refurbishing bedrooms if it's a care home, with a proper timetable. These are excellent things because they show that you're always planning ahead. And it's the same with home care. Those of you who are home care providers will know that it's always the little things that count. If you have, for instance, introduced a new way of staying in touch with your service users, don't forget to mention it. If you have introduced a way that other people are using, but you've introduced it, don't forget to mention it. I went to a home care provider recently who had made arrangements for visiting every service user who wouldn't have any visitors on Christmas Day. That's going that extra mile, isn't it? I think that those sorts of things make people think this is a good service, and then they start to think, I mean the inspectors, they start to think, it's a good service. Could it be an outstanding service? There are so many things that could be included, but only you know what you're doing in your own service. And if you don't tell CQC, then I'm afraid other people might not. Finally, many of you will know this, but I'm always surprised how few people seem to know it. I want to tell you how to save time with all the data about staff requested by CQC. And it is a huge amount of data that is requested by CQC, certainly at the moment, and I expect that that will continue with the PIC. If you have already completed the Skills for Care National Minimum Data Set for social care and update it regularly, i.e. about every 6 months, then you can, while completing the PIR, to tick the box which asks if you wish to allow CQC to use the data on your service stored by Skills for Care on the NMDS website. And if you tick that box, that data will then be transferred automatically, so saving you hours of work. I remember a number of people have told me how long that particular part of the PIR takes to complete, because you have to give so much information about each member of staff. How much easier just to be able to tick a box. I just want to tell you that I'm going to be writing a briefing document immediately after this broadcast, when I've seen what your questions are, and I will be including in that briefing document, if I could just go back 1 moment, thank you, things like this website here, the Skills for Care web address. I will be sharing all those web addresses that I've mentioned during this talk in that briefing document. That has brought me to the end of this webinar, but we are now going to look at the questions. But before we do that, I want to just say a couple of other things. If you have enjoyed this broadcast and are interested in others that we might do in the future, we are planning on doing one every month in the future. The next one will be about the care certificate and the changes in skills training, which was implemented on the 1st of January. I will have with me an expert in the delivery of the care certificate. Kate, we're going to move on to the questions now, are we?
Yes,
and
we
I
are.
have to know
Sheila,
that I have some of the answers.
Yeah,
Kate,
hopefully. Well, thank you, first of all. That was wonderful. I don't know about everyone else, but I've learned so much already from that, so thank you. Sheila, we've had a question from Linda, and Linda has said, hi Sheila, if I go the extra mile when filling out my PIR form, will this help me improve my CQC rating in our next inspection? So is this one we can answer now?
Yes, we can answer that now, I think. If I have any more thoughts about it afterwards, I can put it in the communication that I'll be sending out to all attendees. I think the basic answer to the question is probably yes, because if you have told CQC about things that they couldn't know about your service unless you told them, and if they are innovative, if they help to improve the quality of life for individual service users, then CQC will take your service very seriously indeed. And as I said, if you were to be judged as good, then they would look to see, are there some outstanding elements here? The same with if they were thought that it was required improvement, they will take very seriously that extra mile that you go to make the life of service users of a better quality than it might have been. So I do truly believe that it would be worth any provider going the extra mile to make sure they've got all the information to CQC.
That's brilliant, Sheila. So that just really shows how important it is,
I think so,
to complete the PIR.
Yes.
And as well, within the quality compliance system, we do have some supporting documents to help our clients with
I think that's really important. Thank you very much for saying that. And not only that, but the other thing is that homes in their quality work need to be doing audits as well, because then they can demonstrate that they have the evidence that they are doing the things that, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not
that
at all.
They can demonstrate they can demonstrate to CQC that they are regularly checking to make sure that policies, procedures, extra services for service users that they've put in place are being delivered on a regular basis.
Fantastic. So you say audits.
Yes.
And this would be like surveys? You'll be getting feedback from...
Yes, there are audits of service users for sure, but there are also audits that homes need to be doing on a regular basis. So one of the most important for me is the medication audit, to check that all's well with medication. But then you're right, the audits that you have discussions with your service users about such, and it should always, in my opinion, notice that, in my opinion, it should also, any audits of what service users think about the service should be on small issues. They shouldn't be on the whole service, because you can't expect, in general, you can't expect people to be able to deal with a widespread questionnaire. But if you were to ask service users about the food they get, do they like the food? And that could be one questionnaire, and the next month they could have a questionnaire about, do they get their own laundry back? Those sorts of things. The things that make a real difference to their lives, which aren't necessarily are the records kept well.
Well, that's fantastic, because I know as well on the quality compliance system you've explained how to break it down, and on the system as well we do have the ability to we've broken down to the key questions. So that would be fantastic, and it's supporting clients and care homes in doing so. Fantastic. We do have another question, Sheila. This one's from Megan. It says, I made a mistake with the data I provided on my PIR form. Can I go back and correct that mistake at a later stage?
Well, I suppose I first of all should say that when the PIC comes in, the provider information collection, that they will be able to go back. With the PIR, it's slightly more challenging. If they've submitted the PIR, then they can't get it back and change it. But what they can do is write to CQC, tell them that they've made a mistake, tell them what the error is, and ask them if either they could change it or if they could resend the form back to them to make the changes. The interesting thing is that my advice would always be to keep a copy of any PIR that you submit. So you could try, couldn't you, to make a change and resubmit it again?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Sheila. We have actually had a question from Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte is asking, can you be a registered manager as well as a nominated individual?
The answer to the question is yes. I recently had this question as an Ask Sheila, and I'm trying dreadfully to think. I'm trying really hard to think what I know that the answer is yes. I can't remember exactly what the reason why was, and so I'm going to put the answer to that question on the briefing sheet that I send out, because it's important that you have it right. But certainly in a smaller service, you can do both.
Fantastic, thank you, Sheila. So Charlotte, to answer your question, Sheila is going to send out this response in the sheet we'll be sending out to everybody that's attended today's webinar. That seems to be all our questions for now. Sheila, is there anything else you'd like to add before we end today's webinar?
Yes, I've really enjoyed doing this broadcast, and I'm very grateful to all of you for listening. We will be in touch, as we've said already, and I'm sure that Kate's going to tell you this. We will be in touch within the next 48 hours to find out if there's any more you need. And Kate will always also tell you about whether or not they'll be able to listen to it again if they wanted to.
Yes, absolutely.
But thank you very much indeed for listening, and don't forget there'll be another webinar in a month's time.
Fantastic, thank you, Sheila. Yes, as Sheila mentioned, we will be able to send this recording out if you require it, if you want to re-listen to it, if you perhaps want to pass it on to people. If you'd like to receive a recording, we probably will be attaching a link to it in the information we'll be supplying you within 48 hours. And just before we go, Nikita, if you're wanting to contact Sheila at all, please do so through Quality Compliance Systems. The address you need, it's the one on the screen. It's the customer.care@qcs.co.uk. So please send your email to us and we'll pass that on to Sheila. Thank you, Sheila, so much. The next webinar, I believe you mentioned the 10th of April, and that's...
Oh, is that when it is? Good. Training. And is there to be a questionnaire about this?
Lovely. So the questionnaire that you can complete is the link for your SurveyMonkey. We'd really appreciate your feedback on this. Thank you again, Sheila.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for attending, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.